How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to We the Fandom. Today I'm reviewing Venom: The Last Dance. Spoiler warning for those who haven't seen it, though it has been out for a week now. So, is this really the end of Venom? It didn't feel like it to me, but the Sony Spider-Verse hasn't been all that successful, and now that Knull is free to roam the multiverse, they can cross him over into a Spider Man film without the need of Tom Hardy and Venom. Now, Venom: The Last Dance wasn't bad, but it also wasn't great. It's about what you'd expect if you saw the trailer. The film picks up where Eddie and Venom left off at the end of Spider Man No Way Home. Eddie is pulled from the 616 universe back to the Sonyverse, and while at the bar, Eddie learns that he is an international fugitive, wanted for the murder of Detective Mulligan, who supposedly died at the end of Let There Be Carnage, but is in fact being held in a secret military base under Area 51 and has been bonded to a symbiote. So Eddie and Venom's goal is not to defeat Knull, or to stop a corrupt military organization, but simply to make it to New York, where Eddie plans to blackmail a corrupt judge and clear his name, as well as show Venom the Statue of Liberty. On their way to New York, the pair are simultaneously being hunted by a creature called a xenophage, as well as a secret military project called Imperium. Xenophage is seeking out Venom on behalf of Knull the Symbiote God to acquire the codex inside of Venom, which will allow Knull to escape his prison. The Imperium Project is after Venom because they have contained a number of symbiotes to study and see Venom as another potential specimen. Their mission becomes more urgent, however, when Toxin, who is inhabiting Mulligan's body, reveals to Project Imperium that Knull will destroy the Earth if the xenophage acquires the codex. The codex is like a genetic marker that appears in a symbiote host after the host has died and been brought back to life by its symbiote, which happened to Eddie Brock in the first film. Now, the xenophage, and not Knull, is the main antagonist of the film. There are 3 of these things by the end, and they are complete death machines. They can regenerate as long as they have living tissue remaining, and their mouth is basically like a wood chipper. Something enters the mouth, is ground up by its teeth, and then the back of the xenophage's head opens, dispelling the material. And that's how all the other symbiotes die except for Venom and another at the very end. The xenophage is a concept from Marvel Comics, and it basically is the same as it is in the movie. It's an alien race that feeds on symbiotes. The secondary antagonist of the film is a character named Rex Strickland, who is the head of the military side of the Imperium Project. Rather than being a cliche evil general who wants to abuse science for military applications, Strickland mainly has a cautious wariness of the symbiotes. All he wants is to protect humanity, and he sort of gives the symbiotes the benefit of the doubt until Toxin tells him that either Eddie or Venom needs to die to prevent Knull from getting the codex. And while he does attempt to kill Eddie, he also teams up with the symbiotes to stop the xenophage from wreaking havoc and ends up sacrificing himself. Now, Rex Strickland is also a character in Marvel Comics, but he is wildly different, and I'm so disappointed that they didn't even try to make him more like his comic book counterpart. Rex Strickland was a soldier serving in Vietnam who became part of the Symbiote Soldier program. This was designed to serve as another generation of the Super Soldier program under S.H.I.E.L.D. Rex died during the war, but his symbiote, possessing all of his host's memories, took his place and pretended to be human for decades until he attempts to prepare Eddie Brock for the coming of Knull. Honestly, why even use the character's name if he's basically going to be an entirely original character? The same goes for Detective Mulligan. Yes, he is a cop in the comics, and he does have the Toxin symbiote. Though while Mulligan dies soon after, I'm pretty sure that Toxin is still running around out there somewhere in the Marvel Universe. Toxin was cool because he was the son of Carnage and therefore the grandson of Venom, and each subsequent generation seems to be stronger than the last, so Toxin could demolish Venom and Carnage at the same time. But this version of Toxin instead serves as a living exposition dump to warn the humans about Knull, which, as I said, was basically the role of Rex Strickland in the comics. And rather than being a formidable fighter, Toxin is the first to be thrown into the living wood chipper. I think Sony completely undervalued these 2 characters. There are also 2 Imperium scientists that get some attention. One of them is named Sadie, and her character boils down to she loves her mother who made her a Christmas tree pin that she wears all the time, and she likes symbiotes. She also gets some cool fight scenes in the final act when she bonds with a symbiote. The other scientist, Dr. Payne, is important enough to get a flashback, but not much character development. When she was a teenager, she and her twin brother were both struck by lightning. Her left arm was paralyzed, and her brother lost his life, leaving her to live his dream of being a scientist who works with extraterrestrials. She is also not a cliche evil scientist, though her brother's death left her with the mentality that science requires sacrifice. At one point, she tries to prevent Strickland from killing Venom, which to me seemed less about saving Venom's life and more about studying a symbiote with a successful host, implying that she might have been willing to accept a potential invasion of the Earth as long as she got to continue studying Venom. Though she does help save people in the end, and technically she is the only remaining symbiote host with a pink symbiote that gives her super speed. Finally, there is a crazy hippie named Martin and his family who give Eddie and Venom a ride to Las Vegas on their way to sneak into Area 51. The family mainly serve as comedic relief, but also provides Eddie a glimpse at what a normal, peaceful life could be if he wasn't on the run and wasn't strapped to an alien. Which brings us back to Eddie and Venom. It's been apparent since Venom 1 that Eddie just wants a normal life. He wants to be a reporter, he wants Anne back, and he's tired of all the alien hijinks. In fact, he and Venom separate over that fact in Venom 2 because Venom wants to be a superhero. Well, this film really ramps up the portrayal of Eddie as an unwilling passenger in this clown rodeo that his life has become. Yes, he and Venom are friends, and yes, he did agree that they would be the lethal protector, but Eddie just looks ragged in this film. Now, that's partially due to the fact that Tom Hardy is aging, but I think they made a point to make Eddie look like he's been through some stuff. Though they also make it clear that Eddie and Venom have only been together for a year, which to me seems like another Sony-verse goof, because Eddie met Venom in 2018, which would make this movie take place in 2019. But Eddie also went to the 616 universe in 2024, 2025, so either Eddie time traveled as well as traveling through space, or it's just a mistake that Sony made. Now, while the bond between Eddie and Venom is heartwarming, and Venom's decision at the end to sacrifice himself is sad, something was missing. I don't know exactly what it is, but despite the goodbyes between the characters and the movie ending on Eddie having a flashback montage of moments from the three films, which was meant to feel like a cathartic end to their adventure, it just didn't have the emotional weight that it should have. That could in part be because they kind of sort of teased that Venom could return. On one hand, Venom literally tells Eddie that they will see each other again, and in the post-credit scene, a cockroach crawls out of a tube in the wreckage of the base, and that tube might have held a piece of the Venom symbiote. Plus, there was the piece of the symbiote left behind in the 616 universe, so maybe Secret Wars? But narratively speaking, I feel like something was missing. But now I want to talk about what I liked and disliked about the film, starting with the dislikes. The Venom and Mrs. Chen dance was so much weirder than the trailer implied. It was really awkward. I don't know why they put that in there unless they meant for it to be a meme. And then the alteration and underuse of certain characters, which I already talked about, but another point with Detective Mulligan is that they teased he might have had some powers at the end of Let There Be Carnage. They made his eyes glow or something, but then they didn't end up doing anything with that. And I have two bigger complaints, but those are more about the franchise as a whole. So first, I'll say what I liked about Venom 3. First off, the action scenes are phenomenal. They make up for almost everything else, and I feel like that's been the case for each film. Secondly, the CGI. I think Sony has really nailed down the symbiote transformations and demonstrated all the different things that a symbiote could do, especially in this film where there was like 6 or 7 symbiotes fighting at one time. The MCU should be looking at the Venom franchise so that they can relearn how to do quality CGI. And thirdly, the Venom franchise as a whole has served as an example for all superhero film studios that you can make a good popcorn film that people will enjoy. It might not be massively successful, but there won't be massive dips and valleys in the different performances. People know what to expect when they go see Venom. The marketing isn't deceptive, the films aren't woke even though a woman wrote all 3 of them and she directed the third. Take notes, Disney. The fact that a woman can control a franchise and fans won't have a problem with it as long as the movies aren't terrible. That's how low the bar is for women and minorities in Hollywood. Just make a pretty good movie or show and nobody will have a problem with it. It was the same thing with Wonder Woman. The first film was great, so nobody had a problem with Patty Jenkins, until she made Wonder Woman 2, and that film sucked. Same director, same character, both women. The only difference between the 2 films was the quality. Quality is what matters. Not what's between your legs, not who you're interested in sleeping with, or your skin color. Just make an entertaining film. But as I said, I do have some complaints about the Venom franchise as a whole. The first one might sound like a nitpick, but the lack of an R rating. Not every superhero character needs or should have an R-rated film or TV series, but I think some characters should absolutely have that rating. Characters like the Punisher, Wolverine, and Venom. I mean, the guy literally bites people's heads off, and the censorship makes me laugh every single time. And the second thing is the unwilling passenger aspect of Eddie Brock's character that I already touched on. Eddie Brock in the comics had as much influence on the symbiote as the symbiote had on him, and that includes a negative influence. In fact, on top of being betrayed by Spider Man, you could say that Eddie Brock's personality amplified the anger and aggression in the symbiote, and the way that they developed the symbiote over time, you could almost look at Eddie Brock as the aggressor, with the symbiote being an unfortunate accomplice. It's never been like that in the films. It hasn't felt like a real give and take to me, and their relationship lacks the darkness that made Venom such an interesting character in the first place, as well as a great starting off point for years of character development. Film Eddie had all of his character development in the first film, which could be because Sony didn't know if they were going to make another one, but either way, it relegated him to just being thrown into situations where he doesn't have a lot of autonomy. He doesn't seem to be using the symbiote for selfish means, but he's also not really making that many decisions with the symbiote together. It's more like the symbiote puts Eddie in a situation, and Eddie's like, well, I'm here, so I should probably do something. It felt like his character development in the first film, where he learned to take responsibility at the end, has taken a backseat to random symbiote antics. That's my opinion, at least. Before I wrap up the video, I should probably talk about Knull, who I haven't said much about, and that's because he was in maybe 5 minutes of the movie, and that's being generous. I remember walking out of the film and hearing two guys talk about it, and one of them asked why Knull was even in the film when he didn't do anything. Personally, I think the answer is that Sony used Venom 3 as a stepping stone to make MCU money. What I mean by that is that they have introduced Knull and kind of what he's about, enough so that he could show up in Spider-Man 4, and they won't have to do as big of an exposition dump regarding him or the origin of the symbiotes. So Sony will be able to cash in on Spider-Man again, but also allow Feige to potentially use Knull in other franchises, creating another tether between the two companies that will help keep the Sony Spider-Verse alive. Do I have evidence for this theory? No. But it seems like the obvious move, and otherwise, he was a terrible character in this movie. That exposition dump where they gloss over a character like Knull, of all characters, was ridiculous. I felt like the Codex concept seemed kind of shoehorned in, and I'm someone who knows the character's history. In fact, I recently released a video explaining the origins and powers of Knull, which I will link to at the end of this video, but for the average moviegoer, I can't imagine that Knull's presence or the explanation of who he is was satisfying. Now, if I had to rank the 3 Venom films, I would say 1 is my favorite, followed by 3 and then 2. 1 is my favorite because I didn't have any expectations for that one, but my expectations for 2 and 3 were higher and they were not met. I rank 3 above 2 just because it had better action scenes. So yeah, I wouldn't call this a thrilling end to the Venom franchise, if it is truly the end. The movie was just pretty good. I am curious as to how much exposure Knull will receive in the MCU and what they will do with Spider-Man and any potential connections with Venom going forward. Tell me what you guys thought about Knull in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.